Welcome back to the channel. Today we are kicking off a series. We're going to be kicking it off with Leo as the spotlight since we now are in Leo season. But this is really for you astrology deep divers who want to deeply understand your birth natal chart and are curious about what energy influences are pertinent, whether or not you have a planet in that zodiac sign or in that house sector. So often when you start getting into astrology, what happens is you go down the rabbit hole learning about what does that planet mean? What does that planet mean in that zodiac sign in that house? And that's all fine and dandy. I have many tutorials on those particular topics. Check out my video catalog if you're interested. But where people miss a lot of incredible information about themselves, about their lives, patterns, situations, themes, dynamics, areas to grow and evolve. Where often we overlook parts of our birth chart is simply disregarding house sectors that don't have a planet in it. We think like, oh, my 11th house is empty. Okay, that must not be pertinent in my life. Or it's common someone will say, oh, I have no planets in my 7th house. Does that mean I'm going to struggle in relationships? Or they'll say, I have no planets in my 10th house. Does that mean I have, a challenge or a hardship or lack of something in career, reputation, life, legacy? And the answer is no, because no matter what, in your birth chart, you have all 12 zodiac signs influencing your life in different house sectors. So whether or not you have any planets in a house sector, if that house sector appears empty to you, it still has a zodiac sign straddling it. And in whole sign, it will only be one zodiac sign. But if you resonate more with your Placidus chart, which is certainly the case for like 99% of people, myself included, because Placidus, by the way, it's like a zoomed in magnifying glass on your chart based on your birth date, your location. It's so specific to you, and it has the nuances that are pertinent to you based on basically the Earth's axis to the sky. Whereas whole sign, it's bell curve astrology. So the masses have to be clumped into a category, whether or not that's actually what's going on if you zoomed in on their chart. So you can't delineate to the masses with Placidus for transit readings accurately because you don't actually know unless you saw their chart. So just a disclaimer with that is I invite you to find out what your placements are in your Placidus chart, because you might come to discover so much about yourself. Because, for example, in my 10th house and in my 4th house, I have the energetic influences of not one zodiac sign, not two, but three. I have three zodiac signs that actually touch within those house sectors, and learning the energetic influences of those signs makes these huge areas of my life make so much more sense. And when you get into decoding planetary rulers of certain zodiac signs, it will help you understand like, oh, suitable relationship partners or suitable career paths. But some of those things would have been glossed over if you only looked at, well, where are my planets versus what is actually the zodiac sign straddling that house sector, and taking it a step further, well, what's even the planetary ruler of that zodiac sign straddling that house sector. So that's just to kind of give you this overarching synopsis of why I'm inspired to do this series on the different zodiac signs. Real quick, if you're new here, my name is Nicole. I'm a professional astrologer and a transformational mentor, business coach the last 8 years. And what I love doing for my clients is doing a deep dive astrology session to help them make sense of what I mentioned earlier. Sometimes the things that don't make sense, whether it's looking at your transits, your birth chart, your secondary progress chart, your solar return, you name it. And so I have 3 offerings if you want to check them out in the show notes. There's a live 90-minute call that gets recorded alongside a super detailed PDF with diagrams, dates, all of the things. And then there's also 2 pre-recorded options, both 60 minutes, and they're sent video format to your inbox. And they can either be on your birth natal chart, including all the aspects, asteroids, you name it. It can also be on a solar return, a deep dive, advanced transit reading, you name it. So if you're curious about any of those, be sure to also check out the client testimonials and see if there's one that suits you. And now let's get back. Now let's get back to the show. Okay, so we're going to start talking about what it means when you have Leo, this Leonine energy landing in your 12th house sector. And you guys are probably thinking, like, what? She's actually delineating the 12th house first because 12th house always gets spoken to last. But I decided to put you guys first because I can relate to this placement. I have Leo straddling half of my 12th house and half of my first house. And if that's not making sense to you, check out the preface of the video where I explain the value in learning your Placidus chart, where you're going to find some houses have more than one energy landing in it, more than one zodiac sign landing in it. And this is particularly interesting if you have it straddling both the 12th and the first, because the energies in the sector of life that gets activated is quite different. So if you're like me, there can certainly be this paradoxal, confusing element to your Leonine nature. And what I mean by that is the 12th house is so much about going within. It's like the unseen, it's the time of solitude. It's it, at its core, it's such a different energy or area of life than we typically associate with leonine energy, because leonine energy likes to shine and express itself, and it is visible. I mean, it's connected to the sun. It's like the center of the solar system. And so where we would think this leonine energy would ask for the spotlight to come to it, it's this interesting dynamic that happens in the 12th house, because although there are parts of you who that do want to be seen and self-expressed and maybe even visible, you likely have at the same time a fear of visibility, a fear of being seen, a resistance to the concept of being in the spotlight. It's just not your nature. It's certainly going to be different having Leo in the 12th house than something that is expressed more outwardly, like the 11th, the 10th, or the 5th house, for example, or even the 7th house for that matter. So in the 12th house, it's often where we go to restore ourselves, to commune back with our own soul, to, think about the your incarnation. You're a droplet coming out of the ocean. You're a fractal of consciousness. But this 12th house, it's almost where you go and you feel the sense of merging back to oneness, the droplet going back to the ocean, back to the oneness of creation. And so when we take that into account, this like um, deeply spiritual house, but then even this like solitude aspect of it, this feeling of being away from the rest of the world, when we pour in this leonine energy, you might be someone who's actually drawn and has a certain level of passion or that like leonine ferocity toward the deeply healing arts, the mystical arts. You might be someone who's drawn to be a healer, to do reiki, to become a shaman, to pour yourself into retreats that help you really commune with your spiritual side. You're likely actually a very spiritual person, someone who wouldn't be scared, because Leo energy also has a bravery to it. So you likely are someone who wouldn't let fear be what holds you back from going on an ayahuasca journey or a psilocybin retreat, or doing something that maybe someone else would be like, I don't know if I'm ready to go that deep or like face my shadow at that level. Well, leonine is a very loving, warm energy, but don't get it twisted. It has this ferocity to it, this bravery and this courage to go to where it's being guided to go. And in the 12th house, it's into, you know, the spiritual side of life. You might be drawn to like astral travel. You might be willing to dive into the unconscious realm, and you might be someone who's drawn to doing things that are helping you illuminate your shadow and integrate your shadow. Like the shadow is basically running our life, this unconscious programming that's so much to do with like generational trauma or imprinting or programming we absorbed into our brains till we're like basically 7 years old. Like so much of that can be running our life without our conscious awareness of it. But when you have Leo in the 12th, you are likely someone who's wanting to explore that deep realm, even if at times it's scary. You want to go there and find healing and integration and wholeness. So again, being drawn to some of those like mystical, magical arts may appeal to you. You may be somewhat of like a modern day witch who likes to make her own like potions and tinctures for even your own healing. You might be someone drawn to working with crystals. I mean, I'm like describing myself with all the above, but also at the same time, there could be this current that runs deep within you of fear of visibility and being seen outwardly. So it's like you can explore these areas that are very like internal landscape, even like the deep psychological landscape, but the idea of like being seen. And part of even, I sense that part of the fear with being seen or really being known for this like deeper, more vulnerable side of you, it actually could be connected to like past lives. And I always do a disclaimer: past lives are really kind of just present lives, because everything is just the now moment. So you could be even tapping into like different timelines or parallel lives where there was significant trauma you could have experienced as a result of being seen. So a lot of you watching this at this moment, you're probably going to resonate to the idea of like the witch wound, or having like dreams that indicate maybe you were even like literally burned at the stake for doing some of these, alternative ways to cultivate your health, your well-being. Like there's so many things that like people are drawn to do that are more spiritual or holistic right now. A modern day medicine woman or energy healer, but you literally wouldn't have been safe to do that in the Renaissance era, where there was a genocide to women, and like literally like millions of women were burnt to the stake for that. So I know I've had healing sessions where that was revealed to me. And I once worked with a lady who channeled angels, and they brought that forth to my attention. And there was a big block I had in my earlier days of entrepreneurship to visibility, of fear of judgment and what people would say. And the judgment and the fear of visibility was more about being judged for being spiritual. That was kind of the thing behind it. But you see how that makes sense, because it's connected to the 12th house where my Leo resides. But then I'm grateful that, thank goodness, some of my Leonine energy straddles my first house, because that certainly gives me more fortitude to be willing to be self-expressed and be seen outwardly. And we'll get to the first house in a moment, but this is where I kind of wanted to tie up these 12th house experiences that you may encounter as having Leo touch at some part of your 12th house. And then also grace and compassion, because if you are someone who has that fear of visibility or being known from this vantage point of being as spiritual as you are, or like what will people think, just know it could be that there's like a very good reason you have that trepidation, because in another lifetime or parallel lifetime, it could have been something that caused something pretty traumatic to happen in your life. So compassion granted with that, right? So share in the comments, can you relate to any of this? Holy smokes, this one went 8 minutes. It was a deep dive. We'd love to hear your personal real life examples. And if you enjoyed, please consider liking, subscribing, and even joining the newsletter. Okay, so if you have Leo energy in your first house or straddling part of your first house, this segment is for you. But again, check out the preface of the video where I explain whole sign versus Placidus, because it might be new for you to realize that you could have more than one zodiac sign actually active within a house sector. As I mentioned, it could be actually technically up to 3 different zodiac signs. I want to let you know I can definitely resonate with what I'm about to delineate, because I have Leo in my first house. About 75% of my first house is Leo, and the rest of the Leonine energy straddles my 12th house. So again, it's so important to know what your Placidus chart is, because your life might make so much sense to realize certain energies are taking place in a totally different house sector. And I can't tell you how different the 12th house sector is from the first house. So yes, anyways. Okay, so Leo in the first house, there's no way around it. There is a spotlight energy on you, on your persona, because the first house, you guys, it's everything to do with your relationship with you and you, whether it be even your own viewpoints, your own interests, what adds up and contributes to your personal identity, your personality. It's also your physical body, like your aesthetics, how you dress. There's so much about just you and you in the first house. And so this Leonine energy, if it is in your first house, you're going to have somewhat of a greater ability to be seen outwardly, to be able to self-express outwardly. to you likely, well, but again, like you need to find out if some of your Leo energy touches your 12th house, because that's where you'll have a paradoxical aspect to your nature where you're like, what are you talking about? I'm terrified of visibility. Well, that would be the case if Leo was also in your 12th house, which it could be, which it is for me. So anyways, where I'm going with this is you likely have part of your persona intertwined to being a more creative person, someone who has this desire for involving yourself in what you feel passionate about, this desire to involve yourself where you can pour yourself creatively into a project. And creativity comes in many forms. It could be that you're really passionate about, the culinary arts and the food you make to put in your body. It could be that you're really passionate and feel even creative about the styles or the way you go about your physical health or fitness. And again, that makes up part of your persona, your personality. You could be someone who there's something about you and there's like a flair or this stage presence, uh Leo energy in the first house, certainly, it's so classical. Someone will describe it as like being the performer, but I feel like that's so surface area because there's so many other influences that could in a way be like, well, not really. But for those of you who do resonate with this archetype of being the performer and being seen for what you do, there's something likely intertwined to that allows you to tap into this like childlike state with that, this wonderment, this feeling of joy, like you're captivated in whatever you're doing, and then by default it's requiring eyes to be on you. And in a lower expression of having leonine energy in this house, it could be from wounding, see me, validate me, have me see that I'm enough. But in a healthy or higher octave of this leonine energy, it's just truly, it's by default of your nature. You have like a magnetic aura in a way that in this playful spirit, and there's like a warmth to you. So there's a magnetism to you, a draw to you, an interest in what you're showcasing or doing, what talents you have. But it's just it has like stage presence, but not necessarily because you just simply want to be validated. Again, I'm speaking now to the higher octave, because a lot of people can judge the leonine placements and be like, oh, you're a show off. And again, like all energies have octaves of how they're being expressed and where they are at in their evolution. And another energy about having Leo in the first house is because there can be so much of your personality seen in a certain way. You might be seen as the star athlete or seen as the person who has, great singing or dancing, or can be really successful in whatever this thing is that you're passionate about, that has eyes on you. But what can happen, like a hindrance of this placement, is you can feel like that's the only way you can be seen, that's the only way you can be expressed, is like you have to be that put together successful version that people perceive you to be outwardly. So let's say you get a lot of compliments, then it's like this extra pressure you might carry on yourself to always be put together in a way like they can't see you be disheveled, because it's, they're like, well, that then you're not like hitting the mark. Or if you are always the like, leonine energy in the first house, this person is optimistic, this person can like have a good time and be fun to be around, and certainly optimistic for sure, but and like a spontaneity to them. But then it's almost like, well, what if you actually are feeling down in the dumps and you're going through something difficult and you're feeling vulnerable? It's this feeling like you're not allowed to show that other part of you to the outside world, because it's not acceptable to be anything but this persona people see you as. So that can be part of the hindrance of Leo in the first house. um if you really really trust someone and they get into these like deeper layers of you, that's where your vulnerability can come out. But probably in that more like arena where people don't know you as closely, that's where there'd be this pressure to live up to like somewhat of an image people have of you. So Yeah, that's really interesting because I'm just like pondering my own life as I share this because again, I have this placement as well as in the 12th. So share in the comments, how is this showing up for you? Give us some real life examples. We'd love to hear. What do you pour yourself into that you feel passionate and creative about that's like really part of your identity? Where, oh, here's another thing about this is you can feel you can definitely feel this sense of trepidation of shining too bright, like you almost would have to contract or dim your light. You would definitely feel susceptible to formative years where something about you just being your like leonine nature in terms of your personal identity was too much for your home, your family, your environment, your mom, your dad, like whatever about it could have made you feel like you had to contract that part of you, and dim your light. That's such a classic scenario. If Leo is touching at some part of your first house, you could have by default of doing what you're passionate about receive some spotlight energy, and that definitely could have made others be jealous or envious of you, and then you learned really quick, oh, that's not safe to do something where I excel at it or where I deviate from the norm, and so it certainly could have made you feel closed off. And then it depends on what phase in your lifetime you're at that you're going to allow that original wounding to keep you playing safe and small and dimmed, and when you're going to be like, fuck this shit, I'm going to let my leonine self come out and play and roar and be seen, and it's okay, right? So pardon the language with that one, but yeah, I can't believe I almost forgot to explain that part of it. And Lord knows I certainly can relate to that nuance of it. So, yes, if you enjoyed this segment, please consider liking, subscribing, and even joining the newsletter. Okay, so next we're talking about Leo if it touches your second house or straddles part of it. Again, watch the preface of the video to understand why and how a zodiac sign. Up to 3 different zodiac signs could be in just one house sector. It will make more sense when you understand Placidus versus whole sign. But nevertheless, if you have this leonine energy in your second house, you're going to have so much magnetism, charisma, and creative power to actually generate money, to actually monetize your gifts by simply being you and devoting yourself in the direction of what you genuinely feel called and aligned to do. It's almost like with this placement, the more you value yourself, the more you see your inherent gifts, your talents, your knowledge in different areas that you're genuinely interested in, the more you see your valuable assets, and the more you then give yourself the permission slip to devote yourself in the direction of those things, you know, it's almost like the more bounty and abundance and success and rewards and dividends you then receive. So much of the second house, yes, it's money, resources, but it's also a huge connection to our personal value, how we value ourselves, how we value others. And so if you have Leo energy in the second house, if you're in a phase of life where you're undervaluing yourself and you're pouring your energy and your resources and your time in a way to make money that feels like you're squandering your gifts and that you're moving out of alignment, like if you're interested in something that would involve you activating like the creative side of your brain, if you're have all these like passionate, inspired ideas of how you could make money or what you'd want to do for work, but you feel like you're slaving away at a job that's like completely different. It's almost like that very behavior is what's going to be decreasing the amount of resources you can generate. But the ego will trick you to be like, oh, but this is the safe way, not realizing that going that out of alignment way, knowing Leo is in your second house, is the very thing that's blocking more abundance. You know, it's almost like the floodgates open to prosperity when you honor, like, this is the energy in the money resources house. This is the energy in how you value yourself, how you value others, how you value even spending your time. So the good news with this Leo placement is it gives you courage. It gives you drive. It gives you fortitude and ambition to move past the fear of doing the thing you actually want to do for revenue, for income. And it also gives you this natural ability to draw interest to you. So if, as long as you're honoring your your personal value and noticing, am I moving from alignment or am I moving from a should? Is this a compromising energy or is this feeling expansive? I mean, expansive can still feel scary if it's unknown territory, but there's definitely a difference between expansive and like nerve-wracking because it's something new versus a should. A should is like you're just twisting your own arm, convincing yourself this is the reason to do this. And on a lower octave of the expression of Leo energy in the second house, this could be you going through a life chapter where you struggle to see your own value, where you might see the value in other people and you can be their like hype woman or their hype man, their like biggest cheerleader, but something about where you're at in life, you have a hard time being that cheer support system to your own self. And this can obviously have a lot to do with other astrological placements, transits going on, but all the energy in our charts, there's an evolutionary element to it. It's like where we can grow and expand. So if you are feeling some of that, it doesn't mean you feel that for your whole life. It means like, okay, I'm aware of this, but it doesn't mean I have to like stay a victim to this. I can still, even if it's just like a toe outside of your comfort zone, you could start there. It's like you don't have to jump into the deep end. You can start in the like wading pool and gradually submerge yourself, and you're still making progress, even though if it might not seem like that much outwardly, it's still a reflection. You're moving in the direction of valuing yourself, valuing your hopes, dreams, and wishes, valuing your creativity, valuing your self-expression, valuing pouring yourself into the nature of what you're doing for work in a way that allows that leonine aspect of you to be self-expressed, and even if you're in something that doesn't seem creative, there can always be your own unique spin on it or your unique suggestion that would somehow bring you into greater alignment. So share in the comments how this is showing up for you. I mean, the second house can even be connected to the food we put in our body. So you could even be someone who has like a passion, a natural innate passion for culinary arts or like the food you put in your body, or but then again, on that like lower octave of this, you could at times feel like, oh well, you aren't worth putting the higher, more valuable food into your body. Like it all depends on how the energy is being expressed. But nevertheless, share in the comments, how does Leo in the second house impact you? Share even like what work are you involved in, or what work did you used to be involved in and you're so much happier now that you're doing this, that gives you some of that creative outlet, or even something that has more of a spotlight poured back on you. We'd love to hear. And if you enjoyed this segment, please consider liking, subscribing, and even joining the newsletter. Okay, so if you have leonine energy touching or straddling part of your third house, oh, there's so much I can riff on with this one, because this is the person who likely grew up in an environment where there was some sort of formative programming where you somehow got the message that I hate to say it, but you probably got a message, whether it be a parent or a teacher or a sibling, that you're too much or maybe too expressive or dramatic, or like calm down, or you might share an inspired idea and it's kind of like get your head out of the clouds. And why I'm immediately starting off talking about formative years is often in our charts, wherever the leonine energy is, it flowed naturally as a child before we started getting the messaging and the programming of it being too much, because sometimes leonine energy can be felt by others as too much, or like if they're not that way, something about you being that way needs to be toned down. And children are so naturally self-expressed, so they don't have that filter or that lack of belief in themselves yet, right? They don't have the programming installed yet that makes them doubt themselves. So what can happen is, although you were like naturally self-expressed, because the third house has so much to do with communication, and it's also like the earlier years of education. It's, what we're learning in those elementary, junior high years. It's what's going on in our neighborhood and with siblings, and what we're learning about, and even what we go on to learn about or speak about and communicate about. That's like topic specific or trade specific, not so much like university specific. So when you have this leonine energy there could have been a phase where it felt like you were too much or too fiery in those domains. But then where I'm going with this is later in life, there's likely a phase you're going to go through where you want to remember how you were naturally and allow some of those inherent gifts to come back online without the fear and trepidation of how you'll be perceived. So part of the journey with this placement is you're giving yourself permission to shine, to communicate in the arenas you wish to communicate on, and have presence and visibility in your voice, in what you communicate. And even if it felt like too much or was perceived wrong by like family of origin, or like, you know, maybe you were really passionate about these topics, but those aren't the topics taught in school. So it could have made you at times like doubt yourself. But it's like, as you mature and you grow up, it's like, no, like pour yourself into the topics that you're interested in. That's alignment for you. Pour yourself into the things that spark that creative enthusiasm and that excitement, and allow you to have that like devotional energy. And then as a byproduct of you being enthralled in these things that feel inspiring to you and captivating to you, it's like the byproduct of that is you naturally exude more and more of a magnetic aura, and people are drawn to the warmth and even the allure that you give out with what you're communicating, whether it's like in your podcast or your YouTube channel or an e-newsletter, or at the office, just finding the courage to like use your voice and be seen and be heard and share your new ideas, your innovation, because that's creativity. Anything new is creative. It's creative life force. So you're going to feel your best when you allow creative life force to flow through you without the like barricade of like, oh, get your head out of the clouds, without the childhood thought of like, oh, that's silly and, you know, not realistic. It's like, no, go for it and be self-expressive, and you'll be more successful when you do that. But there might be a phase of having to get over whatever felt unsafe about being that way, or what will people think. And really, as you allow more of these gifts to shine, you could have great success, certainly in a spotlighted arena of what you're communicating or sharing out with the world, as long as it's rooted from a place of alignment and not coming from a place of like, I don't feel enough or worthy, so I need outside attention for validation. As long as it's coming from a place of, well, I know I'm whole, but I'm really passionate about this thing or this topic, and that's why I'm putting it out there. But in lower octaves of this energy, it can be like, I'm putting it out there because I don't have enough personal validation, so I need to seek it through like social media likes, or you know, things of that nature. And I'm not saying you do that, but it is a possibility, because all energies have octaves of how they're expressed. They're all evolutionary, you know, we grow through them as we evolve. So I'm just trying to think if there's any other examples there. You could also be someone who in a way can be like wanting to like gather people in the neighborhood, the community, like host the event, and it coming from such like a warm and genuine place, like host the workshop or the reunion or like the gathering, because this is connected to that element of life as well. So I think I'll wrap it up there. Basically, permission to use your voice, permission to be seen in what you wish to communicate on, and permission to even keep learning about the topics you're genuinely interested in that somehow spark that sense of creativity, or even that playful side of life, or that reminds you of that like childlike innocence you once carried. Like, not to forget about that, but to give it time and space, and then see the success on the other side of doing that. So yes, share in the comments if you can relate to any of that. Give some firsthand examples. We'd love to hear. And if you enjoyed this segment, please consider liking, subscribing, and even joining the newsletter. Okay, next we're going to talk about if Leo lands in your fourth house, or at least straddles part of your fourth house. And be sure to watch the preface of the video to understand why you can have more than one zodiac sign land in a house sector if you're doing Placidus versus whole sign. But nevertheless, with this placement, likely someone who has Leo in the fourth house is going to be deeply devoted and drawn to creating a sense of roots, a sense of loyalty within their family unit. So they might be someone who wants to host the like family gatherings, or some sort of element of like, I'm passing on tradition, I'm doing something that's reflecting a loyalty to this family, this home environment. So you could be um, coordinating the family reunion, or planning this like special way you always do Christmas morning with your kids that has this like traditional element, because this leonine energy is so loyal, and we are in the house sector of family, roots, ancestry, literally the home environment we live in. But there's a caveat. Where I'm going with this is, you could also be someone who's that change breaker of the ancestral line, the pattern interrupter. So if the family of origin you came from is like quite the opposite of leonine energy, because leonine energy is warm and playful and inviting. It's literally the sun that gives the warmth to the solar system that other energies are drawn to, like coming around a campfire. So although you could actually be like that in your own life, it doesn't mean you came from that. So sometimes there's this like conundrum where you want to move forward and have this like amazing life, this amazing family life, this beautiful home that's inviting and comforting, and there's a sense of like stability in it and belonging in it and loyalty within it. But so where there can be a conundrum, it might feel like you even have to be loyal to your family of origin. But what if it was a cold environment, an unsupportive environment? Or what if there was poverty and hardship and scarcity? Well, your leonine placement says, no, I want to move ahead in life and grow and evolve and flourish, and not be living in poverty, but living in abundance. And I want to have a home that reflects that. And there's going to be even like a draw to maybe even having the home be aesthetically beautiful. But even if you're not so much into the aesthetic of the home, a feeling of like a very loving, inviting, it's like a friendly atmosphere, come on over there. It's not going to be that, you're not going to be a hoarder environment with Leo here. Like Leo in the home environment would take too much pride. There's a regal element. So I mean, definitely this is someone who can live in a big beautiful house. Definitely this could be a placement of someone who incarnates as a king or queen. Like there is an element of royalty in the home, in the lineage, in the you know uh even like in the ancestral line, you know but even if you're not from a family that's like that, it can be that you're the change breaker, saying I do deserve, or my family moving forward does deserve to have um life feel this way in this area. You could also be like into real estate, like just on a more like day-to-day sense. You could be a realtor or an investor. And Leo has a brave energy and a courageous energy and like a fortitude. So you can pour yourself into like doing all the things to grow your realtor business or your investor business, something connected to land and property. You have like a fire and a passion. And you could also be certainly someone who just feels inspired to somehow figure out the work you do doing it from home. So like working from home and online business from home. Maybe you make things from your home and sell things, but there could be definitely this like natural draw to be in your home and to enjoy your time in your home and to bring creative pursuits to your home. So even if you work outwardly, you could be someone who does like creative pastimes, like maybe when they were a thing you were into scrapbooking. I know everything's like digital now, and maybe you make crafts at home, maybe you really like to interior decorate at home. These are all possibilities as well. It could even be you're creative in the food you prepare for your family in the home. But at times you could reflect on your life and feel like there was something about you that felt too much or too big or too dramatic for the family of origin you grew up in. Like, were you that child who had inspiration and creativity, and maybe members in your home thought you had your like heads in the cloud or your head in the clouds, and there was a feeling of like needing to calm down or dim down or not be so extravagant in the way you think. But you see, then that comes up later in life, because then it's like, if you are someone who goes on to cultivating abundance and success and being able to buy a nicer home than your parents did, that's where there can be like this almost like agitation come up, like, who do you think you are? And like feeling like you have to maybe contract some of your desires of how big and bold they could be to fit the mold of those before you. That can be part of this too. So part of this is like you're laying the new template for the amount of joy that can happen in the home, still having like the traditional elements, still having your own way to deepen roots, but knowing where there's certain things you don't have to like succumb to or subscribe to anymore, even if that's the way it was before you. Yeah, so this one has a lot of nuances. So please share in the comments, like, how is this for you? Do you work from home? Do you do something creative from home? What was your family like growing up? What are your like feelings pertaining to the home environment you're creating now? We would love to hear. And if you enjoyed, please consider liking, subscribing, and even joining the newsletter. Okay, so if you have Leo, the zodiac Leo landing in your fifth house or even straddling part of it, this is where you're going to realize that you are more leonine in nature than you realize. Because here's the thing, you guys. For example, you might not be a Leo rising, you might not be a Leo sun, you might have 0 planets even in your fifth house. But when you have Leo zodiac touching your fifth house, it means, well, that's where Leo's naturally at home. Leo resides in the fifth house organically, you could say. And so even if you have no Leo in your chart elsewhere and no planets in the fifth house, this gives you greater leonine qualities than you may realize, because it's kind of this like, it kind of takes the fifth house attributes and has them become like steroidal, like extra. And these fifth house attributes are everything to do with your creativity, your like fun loving zest, passion for life, your passion pursuits. It's literally so much of that newness factor of life. It includes the new romance, the spark of new romance, that courtship. It includes literally children. So like the birth of the baby is included here. It's it's even entrepreneurship because of that newness factor, that new enterprise. It has a lot to do with anything that stimulates that childlike wonderment, that joy, those aspects of life that can connect us back to pleasure. And, sometimes it can even connect us to taking pleasure in excess. So it's where we can even fall into vices if anything done for pleasure is taken to extreme. So when Leo is in this sector, you're someone who probably is well aware of your passions and these creative pursuits that you can get pulled into doing, and you feel inspired and kind of in flow state. They just pull you in, and you lose a sense of time. You're someone who can pour an enormous amount of creativity into the things that make your heart sing. You're someone who'd be able to, by default of doing the things that you're passionate about or bring you pleasure, by default, you could certainly attract an audience or a spotlight energy to you. Um, you definitely can be someone who could be perceived as being magnetic in terms of, the opposite sex. You might have a lot of suitors who might want to court you because you could even have that like flair about you, and people could find you attractive. And even if they don't necessarily find you like a 10 out of 10, there's just like a presence, a persona, an energy, a magnetism you can exude by simply having Leo touch your fifth house. And again, this means you might not even have planets there, so you might not have even realized part of this leonine aspect to your nature. But there's a but with all of these timestamps, and that's explaining these other octaves of how this energy can present. Because on one hand, yes, is true for all of that, but on the other hand, you might at times in your life fall into an experience where it feels like you have to only be that way. You have to like only be charming and magnetic and optimistic and happy and creative and playful, and like that fun friend to be around, and that fun friend to be invited to places, and the life of the party. Even like it might feel like that's the only way you're allowed to be. And what about that vulnerability side of you? What about the side of you that has difficulties and might feel sad and might not be the life of the party, or might not always be up for like the good time? So it almost, with this placement, it can almost be a feeling of having to always have this outward appearance? And are you safe or are you lovable if you're anything but that? And so part of the transcendence of that lower octave is being able to express all parts of you, like the good, the bad, the ugly, the inspirational, and also the sad, the creative, and also the times you might feel like lethargic, bored, or apathetic to life, and like knowing like that's acceptable too, that's lovable too. You can definitely be that person who can like inspire others and like almost like light the creative fire under someone else's bum, and be accepting of them when they're not being creative and inspiring and enthusiastic. But it's important to remember to give yourself that same grace and compassion to yourself, and that you don't always have to be in that like perfect performance element. So, I mean, definitely actors, it would be common for actors or people with a little stage presence to have this placement, but you can see how it's kind of like an easy example to give. Like they feel like they're just supposed to live up to this public perception of always being that way or always being on, where that's not realistic for anybody. um, if we're looking at this more from the lens of like children or even like parenting, you could be someone who actually can really connect with children because you're able to tap into that natural childlike curiosity and wonderment. If we're talking about this more in terms of like romance and like dating and those avenues, you could be someone who's perceived as like being really warm and friendly, but at the same time, there could be like a magnetic allure to you. But just remember with this like discernment, because Leo can be really loyal, and Leo can be trustworthy too soon and wear its heart on its sleeve too soon. So that can get you into circumstances that may not actually be reflective of what you deserve or your boundaries. So, you know, part of the evolution with this placement would be really coming to know discernment and knowing where you don't have to welcome everyone in, and that there's boundaries, and that you don't have to wear your heart on your sleeve, but sometimes it takes a couple of wounds to get to that place, and or a couple times being burned to realize like, oh no, there's a it almost gets you to a place where you can like elicit some of that like ferocity, because you this is lion energy here, to like really protect your energy, protect your boundaries, and see yourself in that like more royal regal light of who gets access to you. Yeah, so that's how I'd kind of summarize this one. You certainly can go far and wide if you devote yourself in the direction of the things you're passionate about, and you do have energy to allow you to tap into your own courage and bravery to go further in these pursuits, whether it be in the athletic pursuits that bring you like a sense of passion and pleasure. Like you could be a pro athlete with this placement, but you could also be, you know, a world renowned violinist. You could also be someone who's very creative and literally creates a business in entrepreneurship, and you end up being quite visible because of that being a byproduct of just devoting yourself in the direction of your creative dreams. Yeah, so a lot of great things with this one, but just remember like part of like a lower octave of this is not practicing discernment with who gets access to you, and knowing you don't always have to wear your heart on your sleeve, and that you do also have permission to be vulnerable and to not always be like the light. You can also be sad, you can also be lethargic, you can also be these other things, and you're lovable that way as well. So share in the comments what is resonating for you with this. Can you give us any tangible examples? What do you do for the nature of work you do? What do you pour yourself into that brings you pleasure or creativity? And if you enjoyed this segment, please consider liking, subscribing, and even joining the newsletter. Okay, so if Leo lands in your sixth house or straddles part of it, again, watch the preface of the video to understand how and why you can have up to 3 different zodiac signs in one house. But with this one, you definitely have, well, first of all, sixth house is everything connected to your daily habits, your routines, how you apply yourself, the work you do, the day in, the day out, kind of the minutia. It's also your health. So you can see how even your health habits are part of this, your work habits, your routine. So when we have Leo there, like Leo can show us in our chart where we can exude magnetism, where we can pour energy, creativity, where we can do something in a more playful way, in a way that has a magnetic energy or draws spotlight onto us or requires bravery or, in a way can be inspirational. So with the sixth house placement, when it comes to what you're actually doing for work, how you apply yourself, you could be doing something that would be aligned for you. Let's start with that. Something that would be aligned for you would be something that allows you to have your version of creativity infused into it. So rather than having to follow the status quo as an employee, you getting to tap into your brilliance in a way that allows for somewhat of innovation and even bravery in your creative flair that you bring to the project. But Leo also likes to support others. Leo loves being a cheerleader. Leo placements make for such a good service provider or mentor or coach. So in the sixth house, you can actually, through the power of your voice, in your own unique creative way, you can help people. You can be of service to others. You can be a teacher. You can, as I said, be a mentor. Um, you help people feel inspired, and you help people feel more empowered and even believe deeper in themselves. And there's other fire signs who believe a lot already in themselves, but the Leonine energy, it's really beautiful because it when you tap into it, you can believe not only in yourself and go forward on your dreams with courage. Something about your presence can be the very thing that ignites someone else to believe in themselves. And then everyone's going forward on their dreams. Everyone's moving forward to success. Everyone's feeling inspired. So this Leonine placement in the sixth house, I'd say it's like really inspirational. People look at you, and there's an element of you lead by example. And if what I'm saying so far doesn't resonate, then change career paths is what I'd say next, because your greater success and your greater fulfillment and your satisfaction is going to come when you're honoring the energies that are naturally residing in your birth chart. So if you are hearing what I'm describing and you're like, yeah, that would feel really good. I'd feel like it wouldn't be draining, it would only be invigorating. Then look at where in your career you could pivot. You could ask for a shift, a change. You could go back to school. You could start your own endeavor. You know, this Leo in this placement can pour a lot of energy into what it does as well. It can be devotional. It can actually be very loyal to the nature of the work it does, but it's about like finding out, coming to know yourself at a deep enough level where you understand, like, well, what do you want to be loyal to in the first place? Don't just be loyal to anything because it has a good pension. If that's going to be 35 years of your life, ask yourself, is this going to actually honor my innate talents and my creative faculties? Do they come alive in this profession? And then if we segue the conversation and look at this placement more in terms of health, oh, 100%, I just got to tell you, you need an outlet for exercise with this. This is fire. So this fire element connected to the house, connected to our health, says you you could almost like experience a health crisis if there isn't an avenue for the energy outlet, because this fire wants to move. So this person would do well with having an exercise routine, like moving their body, literally moving their body. And you could be someone who could tolerate even more vigorous ways of moving your body. You could be someone who, oh, definitely enjoys like HIIT, like high intensity interval training. um you definitely could be someone who likes even like lifting weights. You could be someone who even does something with their body that might be considered by the average person like, oh, that takes a bit more courage to do. Like, you're you you're going to try CrossFit, or you're going to like sign up for the half marathon or the full marathon, or even the 100 miler. Like you could have that ability to take charge and lead yourself in a way that, yeah, it represents that leonine courage. And if you aren't doing things to move your body, but your body comes into like even like feeling inflamed or I could see without that exercise outlet, having Leo in the sixth house being prone to like inflammation or redness, or with a Vedic health being prone to like too much Pitta in the body. I know before I got really like dialed into my health and fitness, I had excess Pitta, more inflammation. Even my temper wasn't as good, but I'm so into physical fitness and having those outlets, the strength training, the HIIT, the high intensity interval training. It just it's allowed like my whole body chemistry to balance itself out, and even like my emotional state, because of having that outlet. Mind you, I don't actually have Leo in the sixth, but I have Leo in the first, and it's very similar because it is connected to health in that house sector as well. It's like your personal health, your body, your physique, what you do, da 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 da. So yes, the big takeaway with this is you can have a lot of success. You can go far and wide and be inspirational and really enjoy the work you do and really enjoy your health and thrive in these domains if you're honoring the energy that is in this sector. So, are you able to honor some of your creative innovation in the work you do? Are you able to be of service in a way that even allows you to be inspirational? I mean, you don't have to be a mentor or coach to be inspirational. You can do a typical job, but still be giving that advice that empowers someone to move forward on their dreams. You know what I mean? So I would also say an example of this placement is in childhood. You might have even been like the really busy kid, like on the go, a lot of energy to expel. Maybe your parents felt like it was difficult to burn you out, like you were in this sport and this sport, and you just like had a lot. So there could have even been a wounding of feeling like you're too much, or you need to like settle down, or you're like the energizer bunny. Like that certainly could have been a perception of you in formative years, and so you could have felt like there was something that did have to be dimmed. But then as you get older and you mature, like often part of our soul evolution is reverting back to some of our very like inherent childlike tendencies that we like tucked away, or shoot under the rug. It's about like inviting them back in, and saying it's like safe to be more of that way now, after all. So yes, share in the comments. Give us some real life examples. Give us examples about your exercise and health. Give us examples about what you do for work, used to do for work, what you want to do for work. We would love to hear. And if you enjoyed, please consider liking, subscribing, and even joining the newsletter. We just acknowledge what kind of amazing life my dog Suggy has, short for Suggalite, just sleeping on the couch, snoozing every day, maxing and relaxing. Anyways, let's talk about the energies, the dynamics, the themes that are going to be pertinent if Leonine energy lands either somewhat in your seventh house, or even, just straddling part of it. So, everyone knows the seventh house is to do with relationship with other, the one-on-one relationships, the partnerships, yes, romantic partnerships, marriage partner, spouse, but it can be really any relationship with other. It can even be relationship with hidden enemies, believe it or not. So it's all other, right? When we have Leonine energy there's going to be certainly an inherent natural warmth you exude, or people feel encountering you. Some people, they just give off like a cold persona. No, not you. There's a warmth. There's, I often describe the sun in our chart as kind of where there's almost like a bonfire and people want to gravitate toward. And Leo is ruled by the sun. So you actually have some of that magnetic energy as part of your nature, and it can draw people to you like, a moth to a flame. And because this is the house of relationship, you might attract and magnetize a lot of people to you. It might feel like you have a bustling social circle, or you interact with a lot of people at the workplace, or your partners, your romantic partners could perceive you as that friendly, maybe more outgoing, expressive one in the relationship. But with all of the timestamps, I'm including the caveat of some of the challenges you'll also face with these energies, with these placements, because sometimes with Leo in the seventh house, or at least touching part of the seventh house, there can be a feeling of the natural way you are being too much for some of the people, relationships you encounter, or some people perceiving you as being dramatic. And, let's be real, some phases of your life, you could be reacting in a way that could be perceived as being more dramatic, because in our birth chart, the energies are also evolutionary. It's also showing where we can grow and evolve. I'm not saying you yourself are dramatic, but there's a possibility that, even in your formative years in the family you grew up with, that your mom or your dad were like finding you to be too much at times. Because the Leo energy, it's kind of like, it can be kind of like go big or go home. And by the way, I'm not judging this. I'm a Leo rising, I'm a Leo sun. And sometimes I get annoyed when people just try to like blanket statement it, like, oh, you like all this attention, you want to be the center of attention. And it's not really like that. But at times, depending on what octave we're residing in, sometimes we can, instead of sourcing validation from ourselves, we can source it externally from a need that we haven't met within ourselves. And so there can be you can be particularly susceptible to this if Leo energy is landing in your seventh house, because it's hardwired to like gravitate to others. And so it's easy to fall into relationship or partnerships where your sense of worthiness or validation is through the lens of how you think that person sees you. Are they acknowledging you? They giving you attention? And then there can be wounding if you're feeling like there isn't adequate attention being given. And sometimes it can be like genuinely that's just not the partner for you. And sometimes it can be a window into your own soul and asking yourself, where are you not giving you enough attention? Where are you self-abandoning your needs for the sake of must be in a relationship? A relationship is better than no relationship. Where can you commune with yourself and feel, no matter how you're perceived by the coworker, the client, the spouse, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, can you see yourself as whole and complete and worthy? And worthy of your time, your attention, And I think that's a lesson for everyone to actually learn, is seeing where and how they slide into patterns of self-abandoning for sake of other, or sake of maintaining a relationship that may no longer, it may be at its expiry date, right? So with this placement, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you could have been perceived growing up as like being too much. And so there could be even a feeling of having to dim down some of that creative flair, some of that excitement, some of that like natural, like spunk for life. And that's an amazing part of you. It's that like playful side of you can bring to the relationship that allows you to tap into like a bit of that childlike innocence. And remember, relationships are to be pleasurable and to have fun. And if any of that part of you got dimmed from what was being told to you as being too much, or not jiving with how someone else wanted something to go, it doesn't mean that that part of you is wrong. It just might not be an environment that can recognize the beauty of that. So giving yourself permission to like honor your inherent traits and that jovial side of you, that side of you that can bring the playful spirit to the relationship, that fiery element, that like, let's try something new, let's go out and do this fun date, that's so Leo energy in the seventh house. But then also knowing where you might give too much of your self-worth to how you're being perceived in the eyes of the other versus how you're being seen in the eyes of yourself. Really good placement to be in a line of work where there is interaction with the other versus it all being like solitary on your own. It's almost like you can sparkle and shine more in the group dynamic, or where you're feeling purposeful and like you're being of service, and the way in which you're being of service is being valued. So if you're working in an environment and being of service in a way that's not valued, oh, Leo in the seventh house is not going to like that. That's not going to feel good. So recognizing that about yourself, and that the way you're of service, it would also feel good if it could allow you to tap into your own unique creative gifts. That's something good to know about yourself. And I think that I'm going to wrap up that one there. So please share in the comments. Did any of this relate? Can you give some firsthand examples? And if you enjoyed, please consider liking, subscribing, and even joining the newsletter. So if you have Leonine energy land or at least touch part of your eighth house, oh goodness, this is such a transformative energy. And, if you're familiar with the eighth house, it's already so much to do with transformation, with alchemy, with willingness to go into the dark to transmute it. It's like pain to purpose. It's the butterfly dissolving into goop in the chrysalis or the caterpillar, then coming out a butterfly. And where we have Leo in our chart, I don't know if I've mentioned this in other timestamps, but it can show us where we're able to actually apply a greater level of courage, but it can also show us where we could be susceptible at the very same time to a greater level of like vulnerability or sensitivity, almost like there's this mask or this persona we must showcase to the world that shows the perfected version, the curated version, the version that has it all together, the version that's basically already transformed, already the butterfly. But part of the courage of this placement is knowing that you're safe to be seen and known, and you are lovable, even when you're not in the quote unquote like transformed state, like even when you're in the chrysalis, even when you're not yet the butterfly, even when you're in the turbulence or the mess, because that's part of the transformation as well. That's part of the alchemy. So it's like permission to see yourself as enough and worthy in all phases of the journey, not just like the hero's journey when you already know the final outcome, but no, like it's the entirety of it. But there can be this overarching pressure of like, no, I have to be strong, I have to be regal, I have to show the world that I've already like figured it out. And I mean, that's just kind of in a way like part of your nature to be that way with this placement. But it's okay to have because vulnerability is courage. So finding the courage to be vulnerable to like, and it doesn't mean you have to go on YouTube and tell the whole world your story, but there's an element of your journey that people would find inspiring. And even if it's just the close friends getting like a deeper insight into the ongoings of your life, that could actually be liberating for Leo in the eighth house. And this house is also due to like intimacy, sexuality, taboo topics. So in a higher octave of this, you could reach this place of liberation with your sensuality, with your sacred sexuality, where you feel like you can explore that arena with someone who is like safe and you love them, and it's like a beautiful experience. But there could certainly be phases of your life where you're not, or that doesn't feel safe yet, or you're still dealing with like karmic lessons and you're not necessarily able to feel that like liberation in that sexual expression, where it might still feel like there's something about it that in a way might feel like too messy, or like too much trust or surrender would have to be given versus a level of like control or presentation. You see that with like the surrender, there's almost like a primal release, and how that in like it correlates to actual sex with someone. So it's kind of interesting, like there's layers of this. But in your growth, in your evolution and integration of shadow aspect and all of that, you could actually become someone who's actually even like a trailblazer and like pioneer. Even if you have no planets in the eighth house, just simply having Leo touch your eighth house, you could be someone who inspires other to explore their sacred sexuality. You could be someone who teaches tantra. You could be someone who something about you offers healing to people in these like deeper realms that are sometimes considered taboo or dark, or just even in like the mystical side of life. From a financial standpoint, because it is the house of joint resources or joint enterprise or money you make in other ways, you could even go about, let's say, like a joint business with someone, your loved one or a friend, and it could be a very successful venture if you honor that leonine side that wants to devote itself to something that feels creative, something that you're genuinely passionate about doing and sharing and bringing to the world, not something that just feels like, oh, here's a way to make a quick buck. But no, here's something that somehow gives you this like reciprocity, this like positive feedback loop of you pour yourself into it, you devote into it in this way, and what you get back is this sense of meaning, or the thing you're creating and sharing with the world being valuable. You know, let's say you go into this like business and it's like healing arts, and people come for different kinds of healing experiences, whether it's energy healing or acupuncture, massage, like that could be part of it, right? Or you host healing retreats or sacred medicine circles, or, you know, those could be part of it as well. So I'd say with this one, yeah, a big one is giving yourself permission to move toward actions, decisions, and behaviors that bring you a sense of liberation, and seeing that you're lovable and whole even in the muck or the messy part of the alchemy, and that there's something like even inspirational about you finding the courage to be vulnerable, where it would have been easy to just have a certain like put together, everything's already perfect, despite what might be going on in the deeper recesses of your mind. So share in the comments. I know this one can kind of like in a way be vague. We'd love to hear. And if you enjoyed this segment, please consider liking, subscribing, and even joining the newsletter. Okay, so if you have a Leo energy in your ninth house, part of your ninth house, straddling your ninth house, you know what? This is one of my favorite placements, I'd say, for Leo, and I'll explain why. You know, Leo can show us where we can devote ourselves, where we can tap into courage, where we can go further in the pursuit of something we're passionate about, something that even like ignites that creative flair. And it's almost like we channel universal life force energy, and we feel more energized because we're actually moving in the direction of our passion. And at the same time, though, leonine energy in our chart, it can show us where we can feel vulnerable, or feel like, oh, I have to be like absolutely perfect already, or like maybe like a hyper awareness of how I'll be perceived, and at times feeling like I'm too much, I need to dim it. But it's like there can be this like tug of war. And in the ninth house, it's so much connected to your higher aspirations, those spiritual ideals, you know, even your quest of coming to know and understand God, whether it's down like a spiritual path, studying the Bible, learning astrology. You can, you know, be inspired to go down any of those avenues to come to a place that helps you have your higher vantage point of life. Like what's your philosophical vantage point of even how the world works? You know, the ninth house is connected to the judicial system. It's also connected to book publishing or publishing in general. It's connected to that further learning on that subject that might be university based, or just what you're really passionate about, you know, in the spiritual studies. But it's this house where you can go so far in it that you even present yourself as an expert or authority. So you're the one publishing the content on X, Y, or Z. You're the one putting out you're publishing astrology videos because you're into astrology. You know, you're the one finding the courage to travel abroad and maybe do teaching of a, you know, foreign language. There's a number of ways this can show up, but where I'm going with this, with the leonine energy, it almost can give you an extra level of courage and bravery and like pizzazz to be willing to embark on those arenas, to trailblaze, you know, to honor that this is the place you're being called. And even if you don't have planets in the ninth house, it doesn't mean you don't have these topics activated by simply having a zodiac sign, in this case Leo, in the ninth house. So, you know, Leo really cares about the group. Like Leo isn't just my way or the highway. It's like, I want to rise, but I want us to rise together. So it can be a champion. It's such a good cheerleader. So you can even be connected to like a worthy cause, connected to the judicial system, where it's like you want to do this thing and it's going to be this positive outcome for this particular group. You could be doing something where you need to even have a level of stage presence. You know, you're on stage and you're literally holding a mic and you're inspiring the audience in whichever this thing that you feel inspired about, and people can really see you as inspirational in that way. But in another octave of this leonine energy in the ninth house, you can second guess yourself and like, oh, do I really know enough to be an authority on this? Even though I'm passionate about it, can I actually speak on it? What are people going to think if I start a YouTube channel? What are people going to think if I publish my blog on my website? There can be a really high standard that you're putting yourself in that could, yes, set the bar for excellence, but then also hold you back if it's causing procrastination to just get out there and be seen and not think it has to be so perfect, you know, or not, or like second guess, well, other people have been doing this for 20 years and I only have been doing it for a 1 year, sometimes that can happen with this placement. And I'd say even when you were growing up, formative years, there could have been this like natural zest or desire to question things, to learn, to, maybe if you were in church, to be like, something doesn't add up here. And so it's like you're raising your hand and you're questioning the status quo. And if you ever felt like it was too much, or you got in trouble, or something about the way you thought was an inconvenience to the group, to the collective, it could have even caused you to, out of survival, to dim yourself and to contract in speaking on areas where you do have the ability to lead by example and have an era, or like an element of authority to what you're saying. So if there's resistance to doing that, kind of look back to your childhood. Where had you actually done that because it was an innate part of your energy? Like in children, we don't have the filter yet. We don't have the programming to believe we're not enough. So the way we're already acting as children is our like naturalness, and then it gets like muddled and dimmed by typically adults. But then we go through our growth and evolution and remember, oh, it's okay to tap back into that childlike part of me that was this way. So yeah, I'd love to hear some examples. Like you out there with Leo in the ninth, like what are you giving yourself permission to do now that's honoring some of that creativity, that's honoring some of that passion, that interest in these areas I listed, and even willingness to put yourself out there, to be seen, to be visible, to be known in teaching on the topic, or speaking on the topic, or publishing on the topic? Or are some of you literally connected to the judicial system and doing something that's going to be beneficial, where it feels like a win-win scenario? That's going to be a classic example of having leonine energy in the ninth. They want the win-win outcome. Sorry, my battery's just dying. So yeah, share in the comments, give us some examples. We'd love to hear. And if you enjoyed this segment, please consider liking, subscribing, and even joining the newsletter. Okay, next we have what happens if leonine energy is in your 10th house, whether it be just part of your house, the whole house, straddling it. This one, there's such a classical scenario of your formative years, you being the kid who dreamt big, who had no limit to what you thought was possible. You're the kid saying, I'm going to be an astronaut, or I'm going to do something that from your vantage point could in fact change the world. But where there could have been a dimming to this feeling of like the world being your oyster is the adults in your life saying like, get your head out of the clouds. Like, that's not realistic. Come back to earth, Scotty, right? And so you may have ended up in a career, because 10th house is career, life, legacy, what you're known for doing in the world. You may have even ended up in a career that in the younger adult years kind of reflected a more safe route. And if that did happen to you, you would have realized really quickly that it was deeply unfulfilling if the nature of the work you do didn't give you a positive feedback loop of like, oh, my work is being valued, or I'm like honoring that part of me that wants to feel passionate about what I do. I'm honoring that part of me that wants to feel like I'm inspired creatively in the work I do. But then also a big part of this is that you're going to really not enjoy the feeling of what you pour yourself into not being appreciated or valued. And this is like from a lower octave, if your entire sense of self-worth and being enough is through your achievement and how the world is seeing you, well, that's obviously something that you're going to need to like grow and evolve through. But on a higher octave, if you are moving in the direction of what you are passionate about and what gives you that sense of like universal life force energy just flowing through you in the pursuit of what it's like, you feel innovative, you feel you're able to apply creativity in your own unique way, if you feel your efforts are offering like a mutual benefit like to you and the world, like there's a win-win element in what you're doing, then it's going to feel so good to you. But if you're pouring yourself into something and it's not being received or valued, that's definitely a signpost. Like maybe you need to change the environment. Like it's almost like, think of it like a seed. A seed can sprout and flourish when put in the right soil, when given the right water and sunlight. And so with Leonine energy in your 10th house, you have an environment that could foster the most incredible blossoming of career, and you could become a trailblazer, and certainly you could do things like entrepreneurship or the team leader that really like inspires the whole group, like you're the boss that people don't hate, but oh, you inspire them and they want to do their best because of the way you lead by example. These are the higher octaves of how this can unfold. But it's like, the seed can only go as far as the environment will allow it. So you have to be mindful, like what environment are you putting yourself in? And this is where I mentioned earlier in life, you might have put yourself, because of feeling like you had to dim your actual like level of brightness. If you felt you had to dim it, you might have unconsciously put yourself in what appeared like a safe environment, not realizing that's the very environment like squandering the full potential of your blossoming. This placement you can do really well with something about the nature of what you do for work or how you're perceived in the world. We're by default having the spotlight come back onto you. So you could be a performer, a broadcaster, someone whose voice is heard, someone who's seen, or someone who's known within the corporate because of your place of authority or moving up the totem pole. You certainly could be a creative based entrepreneur with this. But at the end of the day, whatever you're doing, it's going to be really important for you to believe in your heart that it's meaningful, that it gives value in some shape or form to the world around you. And if it doesn't, well, that could explain a lot of feelings in your life that feel like dissatisfaction or like, why do I feel undervalued? And it's like, well, first, can you value yourself enough that you're willing to move toward the things that, yeah, light you up, bring you joy, that you feel genuinely passionate about, and realize those things are the very things that will actually be more appreciated and more valued by the other. But first, you have to value that. You have to value what you're interested in. And if we're not talking about like the classical career, because it is life legacy, it's even honoring the way in which you go about your life legacy. Are you wanting to be the matriarch or the patriarch in the family in a certain way that requires a level of trailblazing or creativity? Then go for it, right? Or are you following like a box or a model because, oh, that's what your in-laws want you to do? It's like, no, if you want to take your kids to this school or take them out of that school, it's like, like permission to really tap into that leonine courage and go about things in a way that feel like you're being loyal to not just those you care about, but also loyal to your heart and what actually matters to you. Because life legacy, it's like, what matters to you on your deathbed? What are you going to look back on at your deathbed and have a sense of, not pride from an egotistical standpoint, but pride from a place of like, I'm proud of the way I lived, and I'm proud of the way I lived my life. Like, how do you live and lead your life? And how can it be in integrity and congruent to what your soul is telling you to do? So yes, share in the comments, like what came up for you with this. Can you give us some examples? What do you do for work? What is like an important part of your life legacy? And yeah, real life examples help us all understand the nuances of astrology at a deeper level. And if you enjoyed this segment, please consider liking, subscribing, and even joining the newsletter. Okay, so wrapping it up here, if you have Leonine energy in your 11th house, whether it be part of the house or straddling it, this is such a classic placement. Even if you have no planets in your 11th house, if you just simply have this Leonine zodiac sign touching part of your 11th house, there will be an activation of what I'm about to say here. And that is the 11th house is so much connected to the greater group, the community, the network, the alliance, the organization we're part of, the organization we're creating. It can be the friendship group. It can be the online group via the internet. It can be the house of hopes, dreams, and wishes literally becoming fulfilled. It can be older sibling. But this leonine energy in this house, there's let's start with the positive attributes. You're going to have an inherent ability to like literally corral groups of people together for a cause, whether it just be similar interests, you're on the same wavelength for X, Y, or Z, or it can be for, a charity, something that is deeply meaningful that you feel devoted to, you believe in, what you're working toward, almost like this loyalty to it. Because when you have this leonine energy in the 11th house, you can pour passion into these endeavors, into these groups. You can also be the leader who initiates it, but you can be the kind of leader that not only are you the trailblazer and people look up to you, you can help people feel like you're not even positioning yourself as a superior, that it's more like we versus me. Aries in this house would be more like, I'm the leader, follow me. But this leonine energy in the 11th is more like, you can help inspire people by leading by example, but help them believe in themselves at a greater degree so that you're all moving forward, so that you are all empowered. So it's a very win-win energy. And you see how that feeds into, like, of course, whatever the thing is would be more successful because it is also connected to hopes, dreams, and wishes being fulfilled. So you're really, really, you have the capacity to have a massive amount of influence. But what's so interesting, so it's like you have energy capacity to have eyes on you, to have stage presence, to by whatever the thing is that you're devoting yourself to, that you feel passionate about, that you feel a sense of purpose and value and meaning doing. By default, it's just drawing awareness to you. But what's interesting is at the same time you can have a vulnerability in this very arena, and often it's connected to formative years where something about your stage presence or your level of impact or your notoriety, even if it was like your level of, let's say, popularity at school, something about that could have triggered by certain people in your friend group, even like jealousy. So there could be a feeling of like, oh, am I safe to be as bright? Should I dim to like blend in and not make anyone feel threatened? Because that's the thing, is like, you're not wanting to make anyone feel threatened. But if anyone ever has in your life, by you just being you, it could have made you feel like being you isn't safe. And so there can be a tendency in the lower octave of this to feel like, in a way, you have to sometimes be a chameleon depending on the group of people you're with. Because it's like, if you kind of like blend a little bit more to this in this group, you'll be more accepted, you're more safe. But then there comes a point in your lifetime that you're like, oh, that's like childhood stuff. Like I don't have to succumb to that anymore. If I really want to do this thing and it lights me up and it brings me joy and it only causes good in the world, whatever it might be, like it could be pouring yourself into your YouTube channel, because like the internet can even be connected to the 11th house with technology, because there's a Uranian influence, because Aquarius is technically the like natural organic energy in this house, even though we're speaking to Leo on it. Like, just trust me that you can go far and wide if you actually open yourself up to visibility connected to the internet or connected to using technology to broadcast the thing outwardly. So even if you are like really creative about something and you post it on, let's say, you're like an Etsy store, that's even a way of this happening. Or you create a Facebook group and you inspire people on that, or you coach groups, or you mentor, or you're a counselor. I mean, the list goes on and on, but you can really be a champion for the group. And you can, by default, have the spotlight on you, be seen for what you're doing in the world or the thing you're bringing to the world. But at the same time, there can be that underlying current of trepidation that says, if I am this visible, if I do have the spotlight, if I do trailblaze, will people try and tear me down? Or will it be like what happened when I was a little kid? And will anyone get jealous or judge me? And there can be a feeling of like, maybe people misunderstand you or misunderstand your pure intentions behind what you do, making an assumption. And that was likely because of, again, what happened in like literally grade school. So yeah, share in the comments, give us some examples. Can you relate to any of this? We all learn astrology better by hearing like the real life way it unfolds. And if you enjoyed, please consider liking, subscribing, and even joining the newsletter. And if you made it all the way to the end, thank you guys. I love my astrology community, and I'll see you on the next one.